My name is Zenobia Washington, and before I tell you what happened the night my son betrayed me in front of 200 people, I need you to understand something about me. I'm not a dramatic woman. I'm not the type to stir trouble, to gossip, to throw myself at anyone's pity. I've lived nearly 60 years on this earth, and most of those years have been spent working with my hands, minding my business, and keeping my dignity clean. But that night at my son Orion's wedding reception? Everything I thought I knew about motherhood, loyalty, respect, it all cracked open like thin glass. I can still hear her voice in my head. Serafina Vance. My son's new mother-in-law. A woman who walked around like she was born on a throne she didn't pay for. She looked me in the face, right after she threw a bowl of boiling hot gumbo across my cheeks, and said, "That is what you deserve." I swear to you, the whole room went silent. Forks froze in midair. Glasses stopped clinking. But nobody moved. Nobody gasped. Nobody came running toward me. The only sound in that enormous ballroom was the thick broth dripping down my blouse and the ringing in my ears. And then my son said the words that hurt more than the burn. "She's right, Mama." My knees nearly gave out. But I didn't fall. I wiped my face with the white linen napkin at my place setting, stood up straight, and walked out of that reception hall without giving a single one of those people the satisfaction of watching me crumble. And before those doors closed behind me, I did something none of them expected. I called a number I'd been saving. I said 3 simple words. "It's time now." Then I hung up, walked to my car, and drove off into the dark night with my face burning and my heart numb. But to understand why that call mattered, you need to know how I ended up in that kind of hell in the first place. 3 years ago, I was just living my life, simple, quiet, mine. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the West End of Atlanta, with a balcony overflowing with red geraniums and bougainvillea I tended every morning. Every day was predictable in the best way. Asterisk 7 a.m. strong coffee. Asterisk a sweet potato pastry from Mr. Henderson's bakery. Asterisk then I'd open my tailoring shop downstairs. Nothing glamorous, but peaceful. And after raising my son alone, peace felt like wealth. Orion's father walked out when he was 5. 1 suitcase, 1 excuses-filled speech, and gone. From that moment on, it was me, my sewing machine, and a little boy who depended on me for everything. I worked hard. Harder than most people ever will. I sewed wedding gowns for women who wouldn't give me the time of day outside my shop. I stitched prom dresses, church dresses, baptism gowns, embroidered blouses for old ladies who wanted to look expensive without actually being expensive. My hands bled some nights. But I kept going. And through it all, Orion was my little shadow. "Mama, when I grow up, I'm gonna work so hard you won't have to know more," he used to say, staring at me with those big brown eyes. And I believe you, I would tell him. And I truly did. He was a good kid. Smart. Respectful. Thoughtful. Straight-A student. No trouble at school. He helped me sweep the shop on Sundays, helped me fold fabrics, even asked questions about sewing. "That's your secret, Mama," he once said. "You listen to people. That's why you know how to make the perfect dress." When he got into Morehouse College for Business Administration, I nearly cried from pride. I worked myself raw to help him graduate debt-free, and he did me proud. Honors, fancy job at a real estate firm, brand new suit that I fitted myself. He'd come to my apartment every Sunday with flowers. "Everything I am is 'cause of you," he'd say, kissing my forehead. And I believed that, too. Back then, life felt steady. Until she walked in. The first time he mentioned her. "Her name's Clementina," he told me one afternoon, smiling in a way I'd never seen him smile. I felt happy for him, of course I did. Every mother wants to see their child in love. But when he said her family lived in Buckhead, a tiny knot formed in my stomach. Not jealousy. Not insecurity. Just instinct. He wanted me to meet her, so I dressed carefully. Navy blue dress I'd sewn for myself, pearl earrings that belonged to my mother, hair pinned up neat. We met at a restaurant I could barely pronounce. Fancy, white tablecloths, waiters who acted allergic to smiling. Clementina walked in wearing a white designer dress worth more than 3 months of my rent. She was beautiful, no doubt. But cold. Her smile never touched her eyes. She called me Miss Zenobia with a tone that made me feel like the help. But I stayed polite. Warm. Respectful. Afterwards, Orion hugged me, glowing. Clementina adored you, Mama. I lied and said I adored her, too. But deep down, a voice whispered, "That girl is lying." A voice I wish I had listened to sooner. 3 months later, they invited me to dinner with her parents. The moment I stepped into that Buckhead mansion, I knew exactly what kind of family I was dealing with. Everything was oversized, chandeliers that looked stolen from a palace, giant oil paintings, furniture so stiff I was scared to sit on it. Everything screamed money, but none of it felt like home. Serafina greeted me with air kisses, smiling a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Zenobia, so good to finally have you here." She said it like she was welcoming someone she'd already decided she didn't like. Clementina floated down the staircase in a pale pink gown like she was walking into a movie scene. "Miss Zenobia, you look nice," she said, in the same tone someone uses to compliment a child's macaroni art. The whole evening felt like that. Pretty words dipped in poison. During dinner, Serafina talked nonstop about vacation houses, country club fees, and new SUVs. Then she turned to me and said, "One can't just drive anything, right, Zenobia? One has to maintain a certain image." I just smiled, not giving her the scene she clearly wanted. Then Clementina chimed in. "Orion really needs a bigger car. The one he has is modest." I felt something twist in my chest. He bought that car with his own hard-earned money. He worked for it. He was proud of it. I said gently, "I think Orion knows what's best for himself." Serafina looked at me with that polite, venom-laced smile again. For his new family, of course. Each word was a slap. The more the evening dragged on, the clearer it became. They didn't see me as Orion's mother. They saw me as a problem. A problem standing in the way of whatever future they were constructing for him. I left that night knowing one thing. These people did not want me anywhere near that wedding. And slowly, quietly, they pulled him away from me. The slow drifting. After that dinner, Orion's visits changed. From weekly, to bi-weekly, to monthly, to "Sorry Mama, I can't come, Clementina's family wants us for brunch." I kept telling myself it was normal. But it wasn't. He wasn't drifting. He was being taken. He missed my birthday. He stopped helping around the shop. He stopped calling unless he needed something. And every time I heard the name Serafina, something inside me recoiled. She had her claws in him. I felt it. I knew it. But I kept my smile stitched in place like one of my dresses. Because what else could I do? He was my son. My only child. The boy I raised alone. I didn't want to lose him. But I was losing him anyway. One day, surprisingly, Clementina invited me to help choose her wedding dress. My heart soared. Finally, an olive branch. A gesture of goodwill. A chance to be included. I arrived early. Dressed nicely. Hair done. Hopeful. But when Clementina and her friends arrived, giggling, snapping pictures, sipping champagne, I realized I had been brought there as decoration. Not family. She tried on dress after dress while her friends praised everything she wore. Then she stepped out in a French lace, strapless gown. "What do you think, Miss Zenobia?" All eyes turned to me. I could have lied. But I told the truth gently. "It's beautiful, but I think lace sleeves or thin straps would flatter your shoulders better." The air froze. Her friends exchanged looks. Serafina gave me a stare cold enough to frost glass. Clementina forced a laugh. Oh, well, strapless is in style. Maybe you're not familiar with current trends? They all laughed. The same way mean girls laugh in high school hallways. And Serafina ended it with, "We're taking the dress." Not because it was the best dress, but because I didn't like it. That's when I saw the truth. Clementina wasn't including me. She was humiliating me. Politely. Quietly. With a smile. When they invited Orion to lunch afterward, and told me not to come, I felt something inside me break. I went home on the bus to save money. Cried in public for the first time in years. Then made myself coffee in my old stoneware mug. Not the fancy cup Serafina gave me. That cup sat on my table untouched, a symbol of a world I was never meant to belong to. A world they never intended to let me be part of. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't going to get better. It was going to get worse. Much worse. The months leading up to the wedding were some of the hardest months of my life, and not because of age, health, money, or anything that normally wears a woman down. It was the feeling of standing outside a house you built with your own hands, watching strangers move in and change the locks. That's what it felt like watching Orion drift further away from me. I'd call him just to hear his voice. Some days, he answered. Some days, he didn't. But when he did answer, his tone was always rushed, distracted, like he was talking to a neighbor, not his mother. One evening, I called and Clementina answered his phone. She didn't even bother pretending to be polite. "What do you need, Miss Zenobia?" I paused, caught off guard. I asked her if Orion was available. She sighed dramatically. "He's busy. We're going over the seating plan. It's important." Then she hung up. No goodbye. No manners. Just cold, clipped dismissal. When I called back, the phone went straight to voicemail. That night, I sat in my living room with the TV on mute and my cup of chamomile tea untouched on the table. The quiet felt heavy. The walls of my apartment seemed to lean in toward me with a kind of silence I had never felt before. I raised a child, loved him, fed him, sacrificed for him, guided him, and yet here I was, being treated like a distant relative instead of the one who gave him life. For the first time in years, I asked myself a question that scared me. What if I don't actually know my son anymore? The thought sank into me like a stone. I tried to push it away, but it kept coming back. What if he changed, and what if he changed because he wanted to? The next big shift came when they sent out the wedding invitations. I received mine in the mail like any other guest. Not hand-delivered. Not accompanied by a warm phone call. Just a white envelope with formal calligraphy and a note at the bottom that said, "Dress code, elegant. Please respect the theme." Those words stung more than they should have. They didn't say, "Please come early." They didn't say, "We'd love to take family pictures." They didn't even write "Mom." Just a cold, generic invitation. I sat at my sewing table, staring at the gold-trimmed card, wondering how a mother ends up being treated like a stranger at her own son's wedding. I decided I would make my own dress. Not because I couldn't buy one, but because creating something with my hands always helped me calm my spirit. It grounded me, reminded me who I was. I chose a deep plum satin with a sheer embroidered overlay. Elegant but not loud. Dignified. A dress meant for a mother who still had her pride, even if her heart was bruised. It took me 3 weeks to finish it. And for a moment, when I tried it on in front of my full-length mirror, I felt like myself again. But that piece didn't last long. One afternoon, Orion called me unexpectedly. I answered with a smile in my voice, relieved to hear from him. "Hey baby, how you doing?" He didn't return the warmth. "Mama, listen. Clementina's mother had some concerns about your dress for the wedding." My heart dropped a little. "What about it?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. "They want to make sure everyone fits the theme." Her mom thinks maybe the dress code would be easier if you just wore something they picked out for you. I sat down slowly. They want to choose my dress. Yeah, Mama. They want us all coordinated. I closed my eyes. It was never about coordination. It was about control. Every piece of this wedding was being micromanaged by Serafina and her daughter, and I was being pushed into smaller and smaller corners until I barely existed in their picture. I spoke gently because anger never helped me in life. Orion, baby, I've already made my dress. It's elegant. It's appropriate. I'll fit the theme just fine. He exhaled sharply, frustrated. Mama, please don't make this difficult. It's just a dress. I swallowed every emotion rising inside me. I'm not making it difficult, sweetheart. I'm simply wearing the dress I made with my own hands. There was a long pause. Then he mumbled something about needing to go. The call ended faster than it should have. Faster than I wanted. I sat at my sewing machine afterward, touching the satin fabric like it was a wounded animal. It was never about the dress. It was about feeling replaced, pushed aside, erased. The very last straw before the wedding happened 2 weeks later. They hosted a family brunch to finalize details. I wasn't invited, but I found out through a friend who worked at the event hall. She called me that evening. Zenobia, baby, I didn't see you at the brunch today. I blinked hard. What brunch? My friend went silent. You weren't invited. I thought you'd be sitting right up front next to the groom's family table. My stomach twisted. The groom's family table. But I wasn't there. They had a family gathering without me. Just like that, I realized something painful. They weren't only excluding me. They were practicing life without me. The rehearsal dinner was the final test, and I failed it before I even stepped inside. I walked into the venue in my soft blue cardigan, holding a small box with a hand-sewn handkerchief I made for Clementina. It had her initials embroidered in gold. I made it as a peace offering. A gesture of goodwill before the wedding day. But Clementina didn't even look at it. She didn't even look at me. Instead, she whispered to her bridesmaids and they all chuckled behind their glasses of sparkling wine. When Orion arrived, he barely hugged me. His attention was locked on Clementina, like she had hypnotized him. At dinner, Serafina made a toast to the two families joining together, except she never mentioned me. Not a word. Not even a polite acknowledgement. She talked about her friends, her relatives, her traditions, her legacy. It was as if Orion came from nowhere. As if he raised himself. As if I didn't exist. The whole night, I felt invisible. The waitstaff treated me better than his in-laws did. Toward the end of the evening, I tried one more time. I stood beside Orion as he checked the seating chart. Baby, can I talk to you for a second? He didn't look up. What is it, Mama? His tone was tight, like I was bothering him. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I just feel like I'm not really part of anything here. He sighed loudly, finally raising his head. Mama, please don't start. We're trying to keep everything smooth for Clementina. You're stressing me out. I felt something break inside me. Stress you out? I asked softly. I'm your mother, Orion. How am I stressing you out by simply wanting to be included? He rubbed his forehead like I was a chore. Mama, it's one weekend. Can you please not make it about you? Make it about me. I raised that boy single-handedly for 24 years. Food, school, clothes, sickness, heartbreak, everything. I sacrificed my youth, my sleep, my health, my energy. Now I stood in front of him being accused of making his wedding about me simply because I wanted to feel like his mother. I stepped back slowly. All right, baby. I hear you. But I didn't say anything else. I didn't trust my voice not to shake. That was the night I realized something that made my stomach turn. Clementina had poisoned him. Not literally, but mentally. Emotionally. socially. She and her mother had fed him tiny drops of bitterness until he saw me as a burden instead of a blessing. And he didn't even notice the shift. He was too in love, too blind, too tangled up in their world to see what they were doing to him. Or to me. The morning of the wedding, I woke up early and sat at the edge of my bed for a long time. I held the frame of a picture taken when he was 12 years old, holding a basketball with his arm wrapped around my waist. In the picture, he leaned into me. In real life, he leaned away. I got dressed slowly, carefully. I put on the plum satin gown. Pearl earrings. A touch of makeup. I looked like myself, but older somehow. More tired. More aware that something was about to go terribly wrong. I drove to the venue with a knot in my stomach. I had no reason to be nervous. I wasn't walking down the aisle. I wasn't giving a speech. I wasn't part of the program. I was simply the mother of the groom. But somehow, that felt like the smallest role I'd ever had in his life. I took a deep breath and walked toward the entrance. This was supposed to be a joyous day. I just didn't know yet that before the night ended, boiling gumbo would be thrown at my face, my son would choose a stranger over his own mother, and I would walk out of that venue with a heart shattered in ways I didn't know were possible. And I also didn't know that a single phone call would change everything that came after. Walking into the wedding venue felt like stepping into a world that wasn't mine anymore. Everything was glittering, loud, over-decorated, dripping in money. Gold centerpieces, tall orchids, soft jazz playing through speakers. Guests moved like they were on display, dressed in designer outfits that matched the wedding's theme perfectly. But no one looked at me with warmth. No one called out my name. No one said, "Zenobia, come sit with us." I was the mother of the groom, yet somehow I felt like a stranger who wandered into the wrong party. I found my seat toward the back. Not family seating. Not even reserved seating. Just a table near the corner where nobody important was placed. Women I'd never met asked who I belonged to. When I said, "The groom is my son," they looked surprised. Surprised I existed. Surprised Orion had a mother who didn't fit the image they'd built around him. And the ceremony. My God. Clementina walked down the aisle like royalty. Cameras flashing. People dabbing tears. Her mother, Serafina, crying loudly for attention. But when Orion walked out, he barely glanced at me. Not even a smile. Not even a nod acknowledging I was there. He stood beside his bride, looking like a stranger in a tuxedo I didn't sew, wearing cufflinks gifted by people who didn't even like me. They exchanged vows. Kissed. Walked out hand in hand. I clapped quietly, forcing myself to swallow the hurt rising in my throat. But the real storm didn't hit until the reception. When dinner was served, I stood in line with everyone else. I didn't expect special treatment, but I also didn't expect what came next. I approached the buffet table, reached for the bowl of gumbo, and before I could ladle any, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned. Serafina stood there holding the serving spoon, eyes cold, lips tight. "That dish is for family only, Zenobia." Before I could respond, she lifted the bowl and dumped the boiling gumbo right across my face and chest. The heat was instant. Sharp. Shocking. I gasped, grabbing the edge of the table as the hot liquid burned into my skin. The entire room froze. But what shattered me wasn't the pain. It was Orion rushing forward, not to help me, but to grab Serafina's arm and whisper harshly. "You were right. She's trying to ruin the night. Trying to ruin the night." I stood there shaking, gumbo dripping off me, the burn pulsing, and watched my only child defend the woman who assaulted me. For a moment, the world felt far away. I couldn't hear the music. I couldn't hear the chatter. I couldn't feel the ground under my feet. All I heard was my son's voice siding against me. Something inside me went cold. Numb. Empty. I straightened up slowly, grabbed a napkin, wiped my face, and walked out without a single word. And right outside those reception hall doors, my hands still trembling, I pulled out my phone. I dialed that number I'd been saving. A deep voice answered. "You ready?" I whispered back. "It's time." Then I closed my phone, took a breath, and walked into the night. I wasn't the same woman who had walked into that wedding earlier. And what came next would change everything for all of them. I didn't drive straight home after I left the wedding. My hands were shaking too badly, and the burn on my cheek was throbbing like a heartbeat. Instead, I sat in my car in the parking lot with the engine off, staring at the reflection of myself in the rearview mirror. My face was blotchy, red, and shiny from the gumbo. My eyes looked older than I remembered. Tired. Angry. Hurt in a way I'd never been hurt before. But underneath all that pain, I saw something else. A calm I hadn't felt in years. The kind of calm that comes when you finally stop running. The kind that shows up when you accept the truth. My son didn't just walk away from me. He joined the other side. And the woman he married wasn't just selfish or rude. She was dangerous. Her mother wasn't just arrogant. She was cruel. That kind of cruelty doesn't show up on day one. It builds. It hides. It grows silently until it finds a target. And that night, the target was me. I wiped my face with a clean napkin from the glove compartment, took a slow breath, and replayed the moment in my mind. Serafina's eyes. Cold. Sharp. Like she had waited for the perfect opportunity to humiliate me publicly. Orion's voice. "Your fault, Mama. You're stressing me. You're ruining things." Clementina's expression. Not shocked. Not upset. Just watching. Watching like she'd expected it. Watching like she wanted it. The truth hit me hard. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't heat of the moment frustration. This had been planned. Not the gumbo maybe, but the attack, the moment, the humiliation, it fit them too perfectly. These people didn't want peace. They wanted power. Total power. And the easiest way to secure that power was to push me out of Orion's life completely. But they didn't understand something important. I wasn't raised to be silent in the face of cruelty. I wasn't raised to shrink or bow or beg. I'd survived too much for that. And that call I made? The man on the other end? He wasn't someone you dial unless you were ready for consequences. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes, and let the cool night air calm my burning cheek. Then I turned the ignition, pulled out of the parking lot, and headed somewhere I hadn't visited in years. A place I swore I'd never return to. The sun was starting to rise when I reached the old neighborhood. The buildings were worn, the sidewalks cracked, and the streetlights flickered like tired ghosts. But the house I stopped in front of, that house was still standing like a stubborn survivor. I knocked twice. Paused. Knocked once more. The door opened slowly, and a tall man in a gray t-shirt stared at me with cautious eyes. Zenobia. His voice was rough, low, familiar in a way that sent a shiver through me. "It's been a long time," he said. "Too long," I replied. He stepped aside, letting me in without another word. The living room hadn't changed much. Same brown sofa. Same worn-out rug. Same heavy smell of old leather and tobacco. Except now there were pictures on the wall, kids I didn't know, people who'd become part of his life after I left it. Because yes, we had history. Not romantic. Not friendly. Not simple. He was the kind of man you trust only when you have nothing left to lose. We sat across from each other. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told him exactly what happened at the wedding, the insult, the gumbo thrown at my face, my son defending the woman who hurt me like I deserved it. He listened in silence, jaw clenched, eyes narrowing little by little. When I finished, he leaned forward. "You sure this is what you want?" I nodded slowly. "I'm sure. You know, once I move, there's no reversing it." I met his gaze without flinching. I didn't call you to stop halfway. He sat back, exhaling through his nose. All right then. I'll handle it. But I wasn't done. Not yet. No, I said quietly. I want to handle it with you. He froze. Zenobia. I straightened my spine, letting the hurt inside me sharpen into resolve. They tried to humiliate me. They lied on my name. They took my son and turned him against me. And tonight they crossed the line. He studied me for a long moment. You don't look like a woman searching for revenge, he said finally. What do I look like? He nodded toward my burned cheek, then toward my hands folded in my lap. A woman fighting for her dignity. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. We both knew the truth. What they did wasn't just disrespect. It was destruction. And people like Serafina and Clementina didn't stop after one victory. They pushed and pushed and pushed until the other person broke completely. Well, I wasn't breaking. Not now. Not ever. He stood up. Give me 2 days. 2 days for what? To gather everything we need. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that raised a child alone, sewed hundreds of dresses, fed a growing boy, combed his hair before school. Now those hands trembled with a different purpose. I whispered, "Don't hurt my son." The man stopped mid-motion. I ain't touching him. This ain't about him. No. It was about the women who weaponized him. The women who pushed him so far from me he couldn't see who I truly was anymore. I stood up slowly. Do what you need to do. He nodded once, firm and final. You'll hear from me soon. I left his house with a kind of determination I hadn't felt in decades. The sky was bright now, pale blue with streaks of orange. A new day. A new choice. I drove home, washed my face gently, put ointment on the burn, and sat by the window watching the city wake up. Buses rumbling by. Kids walking with backpacks. Neighbors heading to work. Life moved on as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. And there was no going back. I wasn't planning on destroying anyone. I wasn't planning on breaking up a marriage or starting a war. All I wanted was the truth to come out. All I wanted was the masks to drop. All I wanted was justice for the way they treated me. And yes, a part of me wanted my son to see the people he had chosen over me. The real them. Not the polished version they showed the world. I wanted him to realize what he threw away. Because once he did, he'd finally understand what it meant to lose a good mother. And by then, things would never be the same again. 2 days passed slower than any 2 days of my life. I moved around my apartment like a ghost, doing everyday things on autopilot. Watering my plants. Straightening fabric rolls in my shop. Watching customers come and go while my mind stayed stuck on that moment in the reception hall. Every time the bell above my shop door rang, I flinched thinking someone from that wedding would walk in. Maybe Orion. Maybe Clementina. Maybe someone wanting an apology I didn't owe. But no one came. Not a call. Not a text. Not a word. My own son didn't even check if I was okay after having boiling gumbo thrown onto my skin. That silence told me more about my place in his new life than any words he could have spoken. Late on the second night, long after the shop lights were off, my phone buzzed. It was a short message. Come outside. No name. I didn't need one. I slipped into my cardigan and stepped out onto the sidewalk. A dark SUV was parked across the street, engine running. The door opened, and he stepped out. He nodded once. You ready? I swallowed hard, then nodded back. Ready. We drove for 20 minutes in silence, turning into a gated industrial area I didn't recognize. He clicked a remote, the gate opened, and we pulled into a quiet lot behind a warehouse. Inside, the air was cool, dim, and thick with the smell of dust and metal. A desk lamp flickered on, revealing stacks of files, printed documents, photographs, and a laptop set up on a folding table. My stomach clenched. What is all this? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he handed me a sealed envelope. Everything you need to know about your daughter-in-law. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside were photos, records, copies of messages, financial statements. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I did. The truth unfolded piece by piece. Clementina wasn't the sweet, polished girl she pretended to be. She had debts. Big ones. Gambling, luxury shopping, quiet loans taken out under fake names. Her family wasn't old money. They were new money barely holding it together. And Serafina? She was drowning in personal and business lawsuits. The kind of cases that never made the news because she paid to keep them buried. These women weren't powerful. They were desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. I flipped through photo after photo, Clementina arguing with creditors, her mother meeting with men whose faces were blurred out, receipts showing thousands of dollars spent in a single day. My breath caught. They wanted Orion for stability. His career. His reputation. His clean record. His connections. He wasn't their beloved groom. He was their lifeline. I felt sick. So this was why they pushed me out. This was why they didn't want me anywhere near. A mother who paid attention is dangerous to people who live on lies. When I finished reading, I set the papers down carefully. Why show me this, I asked. He rested his arms on the table. Because they're planning to make Orion sign over financial control to them. Power of attorney. Business access. Everything. My eyes widened. No. They wouldn't. He held my gaze. They will. They're pushing for it this week. I shook my head in disbelief. He worked so hard to get where he is. He's responsible. Smart. Why would he? Because he loves her, Zenobia. And love makes fools out of smart men. I sank into the metal chair behind me. All this time, I thought they hated me because I was different. Because I wasn't wealthy. Because I wasn't part of their world. But the truth was uglier. They pushed me away because they knew I'd see through them. Because they knew I'd protect my son from becoming their next victim. Because mothers who know their children deeply are the biggest threat to manipulators. He slid another paper toward me. They're meeting tomorrow. Private lawyer. No witnesses. The room felt smaller suddenly. Tighter. Hotter, despite the cold air. What do you need me to do? I asked softly. He looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since Orion was a child, and I came to him for help. Stand up. That's it. Yes. Stand up. Tell the truth. And let everything fall where it needs to. I wasn't sure what he meant until he handed me a small recorder. You're going to get the confession. A chill ran through me. Confession of what? He leaned closer. Of what they think of you. Of what they're planning. Of what they really married him for. I stared at the device in my hand. You want me to confront them? He shook his head firmly. Not confront. Guide. Get them talking. Let them expose themselves. My heart thudded against my ribs. I wasn't a spy. I was a tired mother with a burned face and a broken heart. But when I thought of Orion signing papers he didn't understand. When I pictured Clementina holding power over his future. When I remembered him saying she was right to throw hot food on me. A fire lit up inside me. I sat up straight. I'll do it. He nodded, satisfied. The meeting is set for 4 p.m. tomorrow at Serafina's house. She'll invite you because she thinks you're weak now. I let out a bitter breath. She has no idea who I really am. No, he said quietly, she doesn't. He gathered the files into a neat stack, placed them back in the envelope, and handed it to me. Take it home. Study it. Understand the truth before you walk into that house. I stood up, my legs trembling not with fear but with purpose. Tomorrow, I said slowly, they're going to show me exactly who they are. He nodded once. And you're going to show them who you are. As we left the warehouse and stepped into the cool early morning air, something inside me shifted. For the first time in a long time, I felt my backbone straightening, my dignity rising, my fire returning. I wasn't just a mother who'd been humiliated. I was a woman ready to fight back. And this time, I wasn't fighting for attention, or inclusion, or scraps of respect. I was fighting for my son's future. For the truth. For myself. I barely slept that night. My mind kept circling the same questions over and over. How long had they been planning to trap my son financially? How deep were Clementina's debts? How many lies had those two women woven around him until he couldn't see daylight anymore? The worst part was knowing he'd walk straight into their plan because he trusted them more than he trusted me. But anger alone wouldn't save him. Emotion wouldn't protect him. Tears wouldn't open his eyes. I needed proof. Cold, undeniable proof that even he couldn't ignore. And tomorrow was my chance. In the morning, I put on my simplest dress, nothing flashy, nothing too composed, nothing that would signal confidence. I needed them to underestimate me. I needed them relaxed. Comfortable. Arrogant. Arrogance makes people talk. I rehearsed my plan in the mirror. Not lines. Not lies. Just the truth spoken gently enough to keep them talking. By noon, I felt steady. Nervous, yes, but steady in that quiet way people get when they're about to walk into something bigger than they expected. At 3:42 p.m., my phone rang. It was Serafina. Zenobia, darling, can you come by for a quick chat before the honeymoon? Good. See you at 4. She didn't wait for my answer. She hung up. Of course she called me. She probably believed the humiliation at the wedding broke me in half. She thought I'd walk into her house small, defeated, grateful for any attention. Let her believe that. Let her think she'd won. That kind of confidence is a weakness. I grabbed the small recorder, slipped it into the inner pocket of my bag, and headed to my car. My heart thudded in my chest the entire drive, but the closer I got to that Buckhead mansion, the straighter my spine became. When I pulled up, the gate opened like they'd been expecting me. Too eagerly, almost. Serafina stood at the top of the steps with a drink in her hand, wearing a silk robe and a smile so fake it looked painful. Zenobia, you poor thing. Come in, sweetheart. Poor thing. Sweetheart. All sugar, all poison. Inside, Clementina sat on the couch with her legs crossed, scrolling through her phone without looking up. When I stepped in closer, she finally lifted her eyes, and that same cold smile spread across her face. I heard you've been emotional, Miss Zenobia. I blinked slowly. Emotional. She leaned back. Understandable. Weddings can be overwhelming for older women. Older women. She said it like I was a relic, an antique placed too close to the edge of the shelf. I kept my voice soft. I just want to clear the air. That was all it took. Serafina's face lit up like a predator spotting easy prey. Oh, good. Let's talk about that little scene you made at the reception. I paused. Scene. Yes, honey. You walked out dramatically. People noticed. You really should have handled yourself better. Handled myself better. She was the one who threw hot food at me. But in her twisted world, I was the problem for standing up. I let out a trembling breath, letting them see only what I wanted them to see. I'm sorry if I ruined anything. I never meant to cause trouble. I just feel like maybe you two never liked me very much. A small, shaky confession. Just enough to open their mouths. Clementina straightened, eyes gleaming. Well, since you want honesty, you're not exactly the kind of mother we wanted for Orion. There it was. The first truth. I lowered my head. I see. Serafina laughed softly, sipping her drink. Come on now, Zenobia. You must know the difference between our families. We're building something here. A legacy. We can't have complications. Complications. Because to them, I wasn't a human being. I was a complication. An inconvenience. A loose thread in their expensive fabric. I whispered, why didn't you tell me this before? Serafina raised an eyebrow. Because we needed the wedding to go smoothly. And once Orion is officially tied to us, we can't risk any outside interference. My pulse quickened. This was it. The confession. I asked gently, interference with what? Clementina rolled her eyes. With our plans. Obviously. Orion is going to handle our accounts. Merge businesses. Cover things that need to be covered. Cover things. Debt. Lawsuits. Hidden messes. I played dumb. Why Orion? Clementina shrugged. Because he's stable. Trustworthy. And he doesn't question anything I tell him. He's perfect, honestly. Serafina chimed in. And let's be honest. Men raised by single mothers are easy to mold. Especially when the mother is, well, you. My hands tightened around my purse. But my voice stayed soft. So all of this, the wedding, the respect, the invitations, that was just to get him attached. Serafina smirked. It worked, didn't it? Clementina added with a proud shrug. He loves me so much he'd sign anything I put in front of him. There it was. The dagger. The truth spoken without shame. I felt something swallow itself inside my chest. They weren't just manipulating him. They were using him. I lifted my eyes slowly. And what about me? Why treat me like this? Why push me out? Clementina let out a short, cold laugh. Because you don't fit. And because you see too much. Orion listens to you. That's a problem. Serafina leaned forward. So we made sure he wouldn't anymore. Silence. Thick and heavy. Then, almost casually, she added. We told him you'd try to sabotage the wedding. That you were jealous. That you wanted to make him choose you over his future. They lied to him. Directly. Blatantly. Repeatedly. I felt my throat tighten. You turned my own son against me. Clementina shrugged. It wasn't hard. That sentence sliced me deeper than the gumbo ever could. Not hard. Not hard to make him doubt me. Not hard to twist him. Not hard to detach him from the woman who raised him. I breathed slowly. And the gumbo, why did you throw it? Serafina shook her head, unbothered. Because you annoyed me. And because you needed to learn your place, Zenobia. You embarrass easily. Learn my place. They had no idea what they'd just admitted to. My voice came out faint. I see. Clementina stood up and smoothed her dress. Good. Because after Orion signs the papers tomorrow, we won't need to worry about you anymore. Everything will be handled through us. Everything. His finances. His contracts. His future. Handled by them. I sat in silence for a long moment. Then I reached into my bag, pretending to look for tissue. Instead, I clicked off the recorder. Both women didn't notice. They were too busy basking in their own arrogance. I stood up slowly. Thank you for being honest. Serafina waved dismissively. Goodbye, Zenobia. I walked out of that mansion with shaking hands and a calm heart. They didn't know it yet. But the moment they opened their mouths, they handed me the weapon I needed to save my son. And tomorrow, their entire world would crumble in ways they never expected. I drove home from Serafina's mansion with the recorder in my bag and my heart thudding so hard it felt like it might crack a rib. I kept replaying their words over and over in my head. Not because they surprised me, but because of how easily those women admitted everything. No fear. No hesitation. No shame. They spoke like they were discussing the weather. Like ruining my relationship with my son was just another item on their to-do list. I parked in front of my apartment building and sat there for a moment, staring at the steering wheel, letting the weight of everything settle in. This wasn't just a family disagreement. This wasn't about personality clashes or simple disrespect. This was a setup. An intentional plan. A manipulation so deep and so carefully constructed that my son didn't even realize he was being used like a pawn. And now I had the truth recorded, word for word, confession by confession. I walked upstairs, locked my door, and sat at the small table near my window, the same spot where I'd spent years sewing dresses to keep the lights on. I placed the recorder on the table and pressed play. Hearing their voices again, so smug, so sure of themselves, almost made my stomach turn. But I needed to hear it. I needed to feel every word of it. Because tomorrow, those words would save my son. When the recording ended, the apartment felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that settles into your bones. I sat there a long time, letting my hands rest on the table, breathing through everything. Then slowly, I took out the envelope of evidence he'd gathered for me, the financial records, photos, documents. I laid everything out in neat rows across the table like pieces of a puzzle. Piece by piece, their whole scheme became clear. The debts. The lawsuits. The pressure. The desperation. The reason they latched onto Orion like leeches. And suddenly something inside me snapped into focus. I wasn't doing this out of revenge. I wasn't doing it because of the gumbo thrown at my face, or the humiliation, or the insults, or the way they treated me. I was doing it because my son, my flesh and blood, was walking into a trap he couldn't see. And if I didn't stop it, no one else would. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the clock. Tomorrow afternoon. The private meeting. The papers. The lies. Tomorrow would be the turning point. Whether Orion liked it or not. Whether he hated me in the moment or not. Whether he understood me right away or years later. A mother's job isn't to be liked. It's to protect. I picked up my phone and dialed the same number as before. He answered on the second ring. You listened to it, didn't you? Yes, I said quietly. And? I took a slow breath. We move tomorrow. Good, he replied. I'll be in position. Position. His tone sharpened slightly. Zenobia, you might need backup. They won't go down quietly. People like that never do. I didn't answer at first. I stared at my reflection in the window, the soft light on my face, the faint mark from the burn still healing, the years of strength carved into my features. Then I said, I'm ready. He exhaled like he'd been waiting years to hear me say that. I'll handle the logistics. You handle the truth. The call ended. I stayed awake most of the night, reviewing the evidence again and again until I could recite it in my sleep. When I finally crawled into bed, dawn was already brushing the sky with pale blue. I closed my eyes, whispering the same words I used to tell Orion when he was a little boy afraid of the dark. You're not alone. I'm right here. Even if you didn't know it yet. Even if you wouldn't believe it tomorrow. Even if you pushed me away again. This was my last chance to pull him out before those women drowned him. Tomorrow wasn't going to be easy. But tomorrow was necessary. And deep inside, something in me shifted again. Not the broken part. Not the hurt part. The warrior part. The part one thought I'd retired decades ago. The part that surfaces only when a mother is fighting for her child's life. I sat up, whispered into the quiet. No more. No more letting people walk over me. No more being polite while being pushed aside. No more shrinking myself to keep peace they never intended to keep. Tomorrow, I would walk into that house with the truth. And when the truth lands, the whole world around it changes. The next day felt strange from the moment I woke up. The air seemed heavier, the city louder, like the world already knew something was about to happen. I dressed simply again, tied my hair back, and slipped the recorder into my purse. By the time I reached Serafina's mansion, Orion's car was already in the driveway. My stomach twisted. He was inside. And he had no idea what he was walking into. I knocked once. The door swung open immediately. Clementina stood there smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. Miss Zenobia, perfect timing. We're just getting started. Inside, Orion was standing by the fireplace holding a stack of papers, legal documents. My heart dropped. Baby, what is this? He looked nervous, confused. It's just some things Clementina wants me to sign. Business stuff. I walked closer. Did you read them? He hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. Before I could say another word, Serafina appeared, all confidence and perfume. Zenobia, this is a family matter. You can wait outside. I didn't move. This involves my son. Her smile vanished. And that's exactly why we didn't want to hear. My heart thudded painfully. Clementina walked over and placed her hand on Orion's arm. Sweetheart, your mother is overwhelmed. Let's finish this so we can start our life. Start our life. And his. I opened my purse slowly. Actually, I said softly, I think we should all listen to something first. They exchanged a confused look. I pressed play. Their voices filled the room, their insults, their scheme, their plan to use him, their bragging about turning him against me. Every spiteful word echoed off the expensive walls. Clementina's face drained of color. Serafina froze mid-step. Orion's hands began shaking, paper slipping from his fingers. When the recording ended, the room was dead silent. I looked at my son gently. Now you know, baby. Orion stared at Clementina with a look I'd never seen in his eyes before, hurt, betrayal, disbelief. He stepped back from her. She reached for him. He pulled away. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw clarity breaking through the fog around him. He finally heard the truth. What happened next would change everything. Orion's eyes were wide, almost wild. He looked from me to Clementina, and back to Serafina. For the first time, he wasn't seeing me as overbearing, dramatic, or a problem. He was seeing the truth. I reached out gently. Baby, I never wanted to control you. I only wanted to protect you. He ran a hand through his hair, trembling. Mom. I didn't know. I shook my head softly. I know, sweetheart. They were very good at hiding it. Clementina's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Serafina's confident posture faltered. For the first time, they looked small, like the facade they had built for years was crumbling. Orion took a step back from them, paper scattered on the floor. Why didn't you tell me, Mom? He looked almost afraid. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Because I knew you might not believe me. Because I knew they'd twist your love for her into doubt. Because I didn't want to lose you before I even had a chance to explain. Orion's chest heaved. He looked at Clementina, then Serafina, and finally at me. His voice cracked. How could you do this to me? How could you lie to me? I shook my head slowly. I didn't lie. They lied. Every word you heard tonight, they manipulated you. They wanted to control you, take everything from you, and push me out. That was their plan from the start. Orion dropped to his knees for a moment, covering his face. I never wanted to hurt you, Mom, I swear I didn't see it. I knelt beside him and held his hand. I know, baby. And that's why we're here now. You still have a choice. You can still choose the life you want, the life you deserve. Clementina and Serafina were frozen. Serafina finally spoke, her voice sharp but shaky. Orion, don't listen to her. This is ridiculous. You owe us. Orion stood slowly, a new resolve in his eyes. No. I owe you nothing. I've been blind, but I'm not anymore. And Mom, you were right all along. Clementina's face drained of color. Serafina's lips pressed tight. Orion stepped toward me and hugged me, holding on like he hadn't done in years. I whispered in his ear. It's okay, baby. You're safe now. He pulled back, looking at the two women. Everything you've done, all the lies, the manipulation, the control, ends here. I won't be part of it anymore. Clementina tried to speak, but Orion cut her off. I choose my mother. Not you. Not your schemes. The tension in the room shattered like glass. Serafina's shoulders slumped. Clementina's eyes welled with tears, but Orion didn't move. He turned to me. Let's go home, Mom. And I knew, in that moment, everything we'd endured, the humiliation, the lies, the pain, was worth it. Because finally, he saw me. And we would rebuild what they tried to destroy. Orion and I left Serafina's mansion together, the cool evening air brushing our faces like a fresh start. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the weight lift off my chest. The lies, the humiliation, the pain, they were behind us. Orion squeezed my hand as we walked to the car. Mom. I'm so sorry. I should have listened sooner. I shook my head and smiled softly. It's okay, baby. What matters is that you see the truth now. That's what counts. We drove home in silence, but it wasn't empty silence. It was the calm after a storm, the quiet before a new beginning. For the first time, I felt hope, not fear. Love, not manipulation. That night, I tucked Orion in like I used to when he was a little boy, and for a moment, I let myself feel proud. Not proud of surviving the chaos, but proud of protecting my son, of standing up when it mattered most. Life wouldn't be perfect. Challenges would come. But we were together. And together, we could face anything. As I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the scheming, the fight. And I knew one thing, I would never let anyone make my son or me feel small again. I reached for my phone and smiled, thinking of all of you watching this story unfold. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories like this. Share your thoughts in the comments, I'd love to hear what you think of Zenobia's journey. Remember, standing up for yourself and the people you love is always worth it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.